What if the next medical breakthrough could change thousands of lives? Welcome to Moving Medicine Forward, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on the breakthroughs shaping the future of healthcare. I'm your host, Jeremy Schran, and together with CTI's leading experts, we explore the cutting edge of clinical research transforming patient care. Each episode, we dive into the science, strategy, and innovation driving medical advancements, joined by global therapeutic experts who are redefining how we understand and treat critical disease. From rare genetic conditions to revolutionary treatment protocols, we're not just discussing research, we're sharing the human stories that move medicine forward. Today, we're taking a closer look at one of the fastest growing regions in clinical research, Asia Pacific. As sponsors look to accelerate development timelines, access diverse patient populations, and navigate evolving regulatory landscapes, APAC continues to play an increasingly important role in global clinical trials. Joining us is Pavels Anetko, Director of Clinical Operations and Clinical Project Management at CTI, where he leads project management teams across the Asia-Pacific region. With more than a decade at CTI and extensive experience supporting studies throughout Australia, Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea, and beyond, Pavel shares insights into the opportunities and complexities of conducting research across APAC. We'll discuss CTI's growth strategy and much more. Let's get started. Welcome to the podcast, Pavels. We're so happy to have you here to talk APAC and the expansion into China.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So to start off, share a bit about yourself, your background, and your role at CTI.
My name is Pavels Anetko. I'm Director of Clinical Operations and Clinical Project Management, responsible for our project management team in Asia-Pacific region. I joined CTI in 2014. Gosh, can't believe it. It's been 12 years. Will be 12 years in September. Prior to CTI, I was a CRA and acting clinical trial manager at Icon Clinical Research. So CTI is my second big employer in my professional life. I'm originally from Latvia. I studied medicine. I'm a doctor, but I've never worked as a doctor. Upon graduation, I entered the world of clinical research.
How would you describe the region today in terms of opportunity and complexity for clinical development?
The region, I believe, is fastest growing region, not just at CTI, but also across the industry. The number of clinical trials in the countries where we're operating is growing close to exponentially. And of course, countries like China, they're also becoming more and more dominant in the field of clinical research.
What has led CTI to expand further into Australia over the last few years? And how does it fit with CTI's broader APAC strategy?
CTI actually has been running clinical trials in Asia-Pacific region, including Australia, since 2008 or so. At the time, we had a number of trusted partners we used in all countries. So when I joined CTI, all our trials in Australia were run by partner CRO, and slowly we took over those trials, and then any new trial was being conducted by our own staff. Australia is a somewhat probably classic destination for early phase research. A lot of sponsors benefit from our clinical trial notification pathway, regulatory pathway, or CTN pathway. It means that you don't need to file an IND for majority of investigational products, and you can run trials in Australia with a simple approval from a Human Research Ethics Committee. Australian government's research and development tax credit scheme is also of high importance. This means that for eligible spending in Australia, companies can get up to 43.5% tax credit. So they can actually get real cash from the government. This is one of the means how Australia tries to promote research in the country.
That's really awesome. I guess that's why we see a lot more phase 1 trials moving to Australia.
Yes. I think if you look at CTI globally and Asia-Pac and Australia regionally, then you will see that we do run a lot of healthy volunteer work. We do run a lot of phase 1 trials. But yes, I think healthy volunteer trials in Australia is something synonymous.
How does establishing a physical presence in countries such as China, Japan, change the way CTI supports global sponsors? You mentioned that Australia started out as outsourcing, and then we've brought all the trials in-house. What does that look like in other countries, and why do we do that?
The regulatory processes in both China and Japan, they're definitely much more complex than in Australia. Let's say when we opened office in Sydney, it was just me, and then we hired Hannah, who is still with CTI, who is our clinical project manager. Two of us were able to complete submission for our first clinical trial and start to work on this trial. It's definitely much harder to run clinical trials, especially during startup in places like China and Japan. So small step at a time.
How is CTI navigating requirements for regulators like the TGA and the Taiwan FDA while maintaining alignment with global trial standards?
Well, majority of regulators, we should be very lucky in our industry to have quite strict guidelines, ICH, GCP in place. So majority of regulators are, let's say all regulators, they are sticking with those guidelines. There are regional specificities in each country, and therefore we are reliant on our staff, on their continued education and staying on top of all the changes that are happening in the industry.
How does CTI support sponsors in anticipating and planning for differences between the different countries like China and Japan?
It depends. Very often, client sponsors will have in mind a list of countries they want to run their trials in, or even sites. Sometimes they will request for CTI to provide input. And here we are working with our feasibility teams, working closely with therapeutic strategy leads to identify the right countries where we'll find right patients and will complete trial on time and budget.
What does it take operationally to run successful trials in APAC? Why does having local infrastructure matter?
Being from Asia Pacific, I think we are special there because, let's say, in North America, we mainly work in two countries, Canada, United States. Our LATAM region, there are two major languages, Brazilian Portuguese and Spanish. European Union has very similar processes. Probably Asia Pac is comparable to MEA because we have so many different languages, regulations, and there is no unity in any way how we operate. So it's very important to have staff in each country so we know how to get the study approved and how to run the study.
What challenges do sponsors typically face when entering a new APAC country, and how does having a team on the ground help mitigate those risks?
Well, majority of our clients are US based. We work with some European companies as well, but I think the distance, language barrier, time zone is something to take in consideration. We work on quite a few Australia only studies with four clients based in the United States. A lot of meetings for them are in very uncomfortable time. Things like even dose witnessing becomes a bit of a problem because, if you're based on the East Coast and you're dosing a healthy volunteer in Melbourne, it's a 22-hour flight. So, it's expensive, it's long, and it adds to complexity of it.
How does including China or Japan into a global study expand access to patient populations or strengthen study outcomes?
Japan is a very strong market for pharmaceuticals, and regulatory requirements in Japan, in most cases, require to conduct studies locally or to have a certain percentage of patients, participants coming from that country. In Australia, we actually are running a couple of healthy volunteer studies in ethno-breeding studies where we enroll participants of Japanese descent who live in Australia, but it's only like an in healthy volunteer. So that's kind of paving way to run patient trials in Japan at a later stage. China is a very big market. It's a very big country. It's one of the leading countries in clinical research.
Are there specific therapeutic areas where China offers unique advantages for clinical development?
I think oncology is really big. To be honest, I'm still learning about China because for CTI, it's a new destination, it's a new country.
For a sponsor's perspective, what are the biggest strategic benefits including APAC in a global study?
A lot of countries where we are operating here in Asia Pacific, they have well-funded, well-developed infrastructure, good, high-level, high-quality hospitals, access to population. A lot of countries where we work have aging population, probably representative of, to less extent, United States, probably not United States, but similar to Europe. And to run trials in Southern Hemisphere, you can take benefit of different seasons. You can run a vaccine trial in Australia to prepare for next flu season in Europe and North America for next year.
How can expansion into Australia or APAC accelerate timelines or strengthen data for regulatory submission?
Starting your trials in Australia can actually save you time. You can actually collect clinical data prior to IND filing, so you can our sponsors, our clients can use data collected in Australia for the regulatory filings in the United States.
What considerations are most important when designing a study that includes the APAC region alongside US, Europe?
Logistics.
Yeah.
Logistics is really very important. Stability of samples, where central laboratory will be located. If you use China, lab samples have to be tested in China. You cannot export participants' tissue samples outside of China. So you have to use a local laboratory there, or a central laboratory for China only.
How do you see the role of APAC evolving in global clinical development over the next few years?
It's one of the fastest growing regions. Currently, CTI operates in Australia, Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea. We are running trials in New Zealand, and then we also are running trials in China and in Japan. But there are more countries than that in the region. I've seen clients having interest in countries like Malaysia, Philippines, or Vietnam. You cannot overlook Indonesia, which is 200 plus million population just north of Australia. I can definitely see more growth in expanding in less sort of traditional countries to run the trials. Australia is not a huge country. It's only 26 million population, but I think we can grow further in Australia. I can see our team growing even further and having enough business in the country.
It's exciting to see all the growth in the APAC region. What's one of the most exciting things that you've worked on at CTI?
The most exciting thing is usually your first thing. Recently, our team was involved in a gene therapy study in Australia, and that it requires the whole new additional layer of approvals from the Office of the Gene Technology regulator. It was very interesting to go through the process and receive an approval. So initially, when I was thinking about it, it seemed unachievable. But when you've done all the steps and you received the license to work with this GMO, it was really very nice achievement. I was really very happy about that. Even running our first healthy volunteer trial. And our first healthy volunteer trial, we were awarded it in April 2022. And since then, we've done 8 healthy volunteer trials in Australia alone. And I think our team has learned a lot during that time. And we're becoming experts in healthy volunteer trials, apart from CRC team in Cincinnati, but kind of working on the other side of that. March 2020, when everything stopped abruptly, and there was this sort of awkward time when not much was happening. And then we were approached by a client who were interested to run their COVID-19 vaccine trial in Singapore. And at the time, we only had one operations manager in Singapore. And we did it. We got awarded this study. We completed one trial. We completed second trial, participated in the third one. But that one was global. But the first one was on Singapore only. So that was amazing. In a very stressful time for everyone, a lot of big unknowns, we were able to complete it. And I definitely should recognize our global team. We would never have done it without support from all CTI employees that were involved.
Well, Pavels, thank you so much for joining this podcast today.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me here.
A special thank you to Pavels Anetko for sharing his perspective on the rapid evolution of clinical research across the Asia-Pacific region. From Australia's unique advantages for early phase development to the growing importance of China, Japan, and emerging markets throughout APAC, it's clear that the region will continue to shape the future of global clinical development. And as always, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and leave us a review. Visit ctifacts.com to learn more about how we can help you with your clinical trials. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep moving medicine forward.